Hello, ladies. The Big Balboski here. And right now, you're listening to the Matt Madness Podcast.
They talking all of this madness, talking all of this madness, talking all of this madness. They talking all
right, everybody, so it's now time to welcome in our guests, the winner of the inaugural WWE Cruiserweight Classic and former Cruiserweight Champion, TJ P. TJ, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down and talk with us. How's life at the WWE been? I know we talked for a brief second. You said you're more busy now than you were before. So how's all that going for you?
Yeah, it's weird. During the period of time where I'm not allowed to be busy, I'm probably the busiest I've been in, 10 years maybe.
Really?
So it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. During your time off, have you gotten time to build your frustration about the Los Angeles Lakers? As a Laker fan, I'm very frustrated myself.
You know, I've developed the callous for it over the years, and I don't even mean recently. Like, my favorite teams for them in history have been not always the winning teams. Like, I liked when we had like Peeler and Threet and George Lynch, and I liked like Van Exel, Eddie Jones, Ceballos, rookie Kobe, when they were just barely making the playoffs. Like, I liked some of the leaner years. So, I've come to enjoy each team as they are. Probably the only one I didn't really like was when it was Kobe and a bunch of plumbers for 3 or 4 years. That was pretty rough.
Yeah, just sitting there, hold on to hope of, like, okay, maybe he could be a guy. Maybe Jordan Clarkson's the guy. Maybe Kendall Marshall's the guy. But it just didn't work out that way. It was something.
I'm talking back when it was like 05.
Oh, yeah, that was the worst.
04, 05, 06.
Yeah, Smush Parker. Smush Parker, Kwame Brown.
Yeah. I mean,
who else was they had?
Yeah, those are crazy years. I mean, we basically just added Powell and Kobe put everybody on his back and got us back to the finals. But man, it was like we had like 3 Russian dudes on the team. Like, yeah, we had a lot of random guys.
In the 05 team, I know it was Sasha Vujicic.
I think Karan was on that.
Yeah, Karan Butler.
Maybe.
Yeah, and then they traded him for Kwame that off season, and Tierre Brown. Yeah, I remember all those years.
Oh yeah, I mean, half of the starting 5, and then the rest of the bench were like, if you read the names, it's like those filler names on like the legend teams on 2K when they have like just random names.
The generic names like Mark Davis and John Brown.
Yeah, like unlicensed. Like it was like Kobe and like 12 unlicensed players. Like, that's what it was.
Now, if we have time, we might get back to the Lakers a bit.
All right.
Now, transition into wrestling. Now, a lot of us were introduced to you in the Cruiserweight Classic in the summer of 2016. Now, how are you approached about the idea of the Cruiserweight Classic and being a part of it?
Let's see. If I remember it correctly, it was William Regal had called me, and I knew him a little bit from before because he used to, he's kind of had a low-key scouting job for years. Mm-hmm. And when I was a teenager, I was in what was at the time like one of the first developmentals. It was called UPW. It's where John Cena came from, Victoria, Miz. Yeah, a lot of those guys came from there. And I was there. I was like 15, 16 years old. And that was the first time I met Regal, because he had come in and worked a little bit and was also kind of a liaison for WWE, because he, even as a performer, before he was winding down, he was already kind of being used as like a go-between for scouting talent and stuff like that. And so he just, if I remember correctly, he just called me and left me a message and said that, we're putting together this thing and if I'd be interested. And I said, sure. I had just parted ways with TNA, I think, not long before that. So I just been kind of go to Mexico and Japan and some stuff in the meantime, and that was it.
Now, when you saw the roster of the participants in the Cruiserweight Classic, it included some of the biggest names in wrestling at the time and till this day, Zack Sabre Jr., Kota Ibushi, and Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, who were already with NXT at the time. Now, did you feel that you were going to win the entire time, or did you have an idea of who they wanted to win?
I honestly didn't even think about it. It's weird. By the time this had come up, WWE was no longer a bucket list goal of mine. I mean, I'd come in and out and done some, spot matches here and there for Raw or SmackDown, or I think the ECW brand that they had, and some dark matches and things. And I was in a couple of different developmental camps and things like that. And for me, that was enough. I never aspired to be on WrestleMania or SummerSlam or something like that. So I was kind of just wanting to just wrestle at that time. So I didn't think much of it. I thought, okay, I'll do this. It'll probably be kind of fun. And that'll probably be it. I might be a one and done or something. And that's it. And I didn't know what the rest of the field was either, because when Regal had called me, he also asked me to help him find guys. If there were people that they weren't aware of that they really needed to showcase. So, I tried to help them out, point them in the direction of certain guys here and there, from Mexico or Japan or something like that. And I don't really remember who all we talked about together, or if any of the people were guys that I had recommended, or if they already kind of had them on the radar. They pretty much had all the guys on the radar. But no, I didn't really, it didn't weigh very heavily. I mean, I didn't think much of it. I almost kind of looked at it as just another booking.
Really?
Hey, yeah, I'm going to do, Evolve in Orlando, and I got this one gig in Chicago, and then I got this WWE thing, and then I also got this other thing in Philly, and it was just a thing on the schedule. I didn't think much of it at the time.
All right, now transition. Now, when we found out that you won, we were completely excited because you were one of our favorites in the Cruiserweight Classic. So, what was your reaction when you found out you were going to win and be the first Cruiserweight champion?
Kind of the same. As
really?
I guess. Because I knew from round one. And that's kind of a misconception with, I think, what a lot the people think is the narrative is that, they really wanted to do, say, Kota and Zack, right?
Yeah, that was the hot pick. Yeah,
right. And I think that's something that a lot of, I mean, even I would have loved to see that, but that was, I think they were separated in the brackets to give that perception.
Yeah.
But I know, at least as far as I know, from round one on, that was never going to happen. I think that was just there for people to be like, oh man, I hope this happens, so that as the tournament goes on, they're glued to it, because there's so many different types of fans. Most fans don't know who any of us are,
yeah.
Zack or Kota included. That's 99% of people watching this. So, but then there's diehard fans that do want to see that. There's some diehard fans that say want to see Gargano go on a Cinderella run. And then there's some fans that just, they like who they like. They like Rich. They like me. They like, Metallic from CMLL in Japan. And I think that was just there to be a narrative for certain diehard fans that were like, man, I know this is where they're going to go in the end. But that was, I knew from round one, because they had asked me who I wanted to wrestle in the finals. Oh. And I originally said I wanted Zack. So, but they kind of said, well, we kind of want you to go with either Zack or Metallic. And I really like Metallic. I had known him for a few years. We did the Super Juniors together. But Zack was just a little bit more in my strike zone, I guess, Yeah. I think that, yeah. And we're pretty good friends. We get along real well. So I thought we'd have a fun match. But they ended up wanting to go with Metallic.
Now, how long was the time frame for the entire thing for you guys? of the tournament?
As far as what do you mean?
As far as the timetable from the beginning of the beginning of the tournament to the end, how long did that take for you?
Well, let's see. Well, each round was a separate day, except for the, I guess, final two, because we did it back to back. That may have been one of the tougher nights for me ever in wrestling, just because I had those two matches back to back with just, I think, one match in between us. Mm-hmm. And both guys neither speak English and neither speak the same language as each other. So I was calling different matches in different languages to these guys. But yeah, I mean, I want to say, I mean, we were shooting all these events between like May and September, maybe.
Okay. Now transition to when the Cruiserweights debut on Raw. Now, the first night the Cruiserweight division debuted, you specifically weren't on Raw. I believe it was a triple threat match to determine who would face you at Clash of Champions. And your first feud was with the Brian Kendrick. And I thought it was the perfect way to introduce yourself and the division, because Brian Kendrick was the familiar face in the division. What was it like working with Brian during that time?
I mean, it was cool because Brian and I hadn't really shared a locker room in years, and we were really good friends when we were first starting out. We started around the same time. I started in 1998. He was 99, and we did a lot of stuff in LA together and traveled a lot. A lot of those stories that we told on TV were real stories. Like, I really did ditch school, and he would pick me up, and we would carpool to shows Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, and then I'd just go back to school on Monday morning. A lot of those are real stories. So it was cool, getting to be with him. And a lot of the guys that were in the tournament this was their first time at this level and their first time having a wrestling job. Mm-hmm. And there was only a few of us, and me and Brian were one of the only two that we'd had wrestling jobs before. So it was comfortable because a lot of the other guys were a little bit timid and trying to find their footing. But Brian and I were used to being at that level of production and that type of stage. So.
Now, the Cruiserweight division as a whole was always a big topic on our show. We thought you guys were presented right. The purple ropes, the how the Raw would go hold Cruiserweight in the arena. We thought it was great, and you guys would eventually get 205 Live a few months later after the resurrection of the Cruiserweight division. Is there anything different that you would have done different if you were making the call with the Cruiserweights?
I think integration is really what made it a tough uphill battle from the beginning. And but that's really a hindsight thing because you don't know, right? You go into this and you think, okay, we'll make this division, and if we make it separate, it'll feel special. But then on the other hand, that is so backwards from the formula of how we introduce stars on these shows and on that stage. Like, for example, if you come from NXT, let's say you're like Elias or somebody like that, right? Yeah. You'll come in and you'll be by yourself. You'll be introduced opposite of, say, Chris Jericho or somebody like that, and you immediately make an impact by intruding on him, and you have this one-on-one story to tell, and you're going to get a lot of residual attention off of somebody that the people already know really well, they respect, and they've already accepted them. And then from that point on, you have, a pretty immediate springboard and a spotlight that you didn't have to share, and a lot of singular focus. And that's how everybody comes in. We were opposite. So we were coming in as, 10, 12 guys nobody's ever seen before. And we're only with each other. So we don't have that residual attention working off of somebody that is known or well respected or something like that. So we don't get that type of equity off of other people. So you tread water a little bit in the beginning, and then I think that was the tough part, is that in hindsight, it might have been better to have some of us on SmackDown, some of us on Raw, and working alongside other people so that we can be, build some equity as individual characters and still do cruiserweight matches in the meantime. Because then that hurt us in the long run. Like, I think from the moment we started, we were presented really well. We had a great springboard, and we kind of slowly lost momentum, like from the Neville period to the Enzo period. Like, it just kept getting slower and slower and slower. And you could kind of see they would start after the title was moved away from me, Rich, Brian, they started taking the title matches off the pay-per-views, and then we were not on Raw as much and stuff like that. And we were just losing steam, and it's just hard because, the segregation really hurt us.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I personally think wasn't a great idea was the fact that you guys were taking off Raw early last year, because I thought the audience needed to see you guys too, as well as on 205 Live to get an idea. And like you said, you guys getting off the pay-per-view cards onto pre-shows or not on the card at all. Do you think you guys got the right exposure?
I think that I agree with, I think, what you said, and you could kind of see it. Like, I would see it, I think from a fan's perspective, it's hard because you're on one side of the fence, and so many groups of fans, you get, like, they exist in echo chambers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they don't really see the whole picture. But like from the inside looking out, I could see the way everybody perceives us and the differences. And I could see like the initial group that came in, there was like 4 or 5 of us that were showcased a lot. Say like me, Rich, Brian, Cedric. We were consistently on like Raw every week, and then heavily featured on 205s. And to this day, if we do like, when we would do access, like even just at this recent Royal Rumble access, a lot of people, their perception of the Cruiserweight division is still us 4.
Really?
Like, that's how big that perception was, and how disconnected it became once it got moved off. Like some of the guys that are headlining 205 now, people don't even know they're on the show because they kind of tuned out once we were moved off of Raw, and that hurts the group, Yeah. And that's just the way it is, like in mass, because the company's so big and the product is so huge. Once you disconnect that portion, like the familiarity drops so much.
Yeah, because I felt when I do catch 205 Live, I feel that a lot of the stuff that you guys do with storytelling, like your your work with Lucha House Party, collecting the mask, Drew Gulak, Jack Gallagher, a lot of the storytelling is really good. And I think that the fans should at least see some of that on the weekly television show, so that can kind of get them to tune in.
Yeah, like I think if people get to see that type of stuff on Raw or SmackDown, like those stories you mentioned, then it would get a totally different amount of traction and work in a totally different way. But just like I said, I just think segregation kind of hurt us, because like even the Neville period, we were all having good matches and stuff, but to the casual fan, we're still a dozen guys that they don't know, and we're just lining up to lose to a guy that they kind of know. But then now they just want that guy to go back to the other shows because he's doing so well. And then they stop believing in the other guys. So even that was like, the segregation really hurt us,
Yeah. Now, recently, Mustafa Ali made his way to the SmackDown Live roster, and you kind of hit on it with segregation. Now, a concern that we had with the inception of the division was that you guys would get pigeonholed, and the only ceiling would be for cruiserweights. Now, I remember you having a campaign for a shot at the IC title. What was it like trying to move outside of the division and get onto the Raw and SmackDown roster?
I don't know. It's tough to describe. I've never really been like a political guy. So, I've always just tried to approach stuff based on merit. And so, that's just a part of the game though. So a lot of guys can find opportunities through that means. And for me, it was really just more about proactivity. So for me, it was a little bit frustrating because there were certain doors I didn't want to open, and certain things certain ways I didn't want to work. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
From an integrity standpoint. But It was kind of a long process because maybe a year ago I had approached, I knocked on Vince's door in London. We were doing TV in London, and I told him that, I didn't feel like I was really a commodity to him anymore in my current form. I was just a moves guy on a moves show. And when I first came in, I was presented as a global superstar that connected to a certain community, my community. And when I got to Raw, they're two different planets, like the NXT system, the network shows, and Raw and SmackDown.
Yes.
And I mean, it is so completely disconnected, like two different creative teams, two different everything. And so the moving up, they didn't, this team didn't know who I was. They didn't really know me very well. So they kind of disconnected me from the stuff that kind of got me over in the first place, that formed that connection. And basically I just told them I wanted to get back to that. That's what my value should be to you. And that's really what it is, my community, Asian Americans, they want their Mysterio, their Guerrero, and they're familiar with me. They'd like me to be that. And that's what I want to be. And so, we spent a year trying to figure out like the right story and the right way to do it because, he was all for that change of direction. And so it was really just about trying to find a way that would make sense to get me onto, I think it was Raw that we had picked from the beginning. We just thought that'd be a better place for me. But, literally it just comes down to finding the right fit. And there's so many things in the cupboard and so many meals that they want to cook. And if it just doesn't feel like you fit the menu correctly, then you just got to sit on the cupboard and wait. And then, that's the process everybody goes through.
Yeah, because you talked about how NXT, Raw, and SmackDown are completely different entities. Now, me personally, I consider NXT and 205 Live more the wrestling shows and Raw and SmackDown as the sports entertainment shows, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of changing now because like all the stuff that recently with people speculating and thinking, about Vince being high on like athleticism and more wrestling type stuff, that's all legitimate. He really did, get a chance to sit down and really see what some of the other shows are doing. And he really did like kind of make a mandate that, man, I want everybody to be able to do this. And the whole company was kind of like, dude, all of your guys can do this. So if you let them go, they'll like everybody from, Rusev to Aiden English to the dudes in NXT to the guys in UK, everybody can go. So it was like, that's why you're starting to see everybody kind of let loose.
Now, when superstars leave, after the fact, we always learn about ideas they had or pitches they wanted to make, and they just didn't get done or didn't get approved. Were there any ideas or pitches that you had for yourself and your character?
Oh man, they're still using them to this day.
Really?
I pitched, the Finn and Elias stuff that they were doing on house shows this week.
Oh, really? That was you? I just saw that before you called.
The story they debuted for Ricochet was a pitch of mine as well. Mm-hmm. When they gave Enzo the Zoe show, and then when they did the Alexa Bliss thing when she was kind of got hurt initially, that was also a pitch of mine because I had 3 months I think off, and they didn't know what to do while I was off, and I think I was hurt for some of it, so I pitched an in-ring talking segment for 205 just to help. Some of the guys were not so good at promos, and mm-hmm. I have a pretty good natural personality in front of the camera. So, I was like, I could help get other stories over, even if I don't have one. There's a lot of stuff that I had pitched, especially when it came down to trying to figure out creative to get me back to, connecting to like my community and being, who I was in the CWC. The idea was I need to, we need to connect that to some sort of creative. So before we picked like which platform I'd be on, they, asked for pitches. They told me to write, and man, I wrote something for everybody. I was like,
really?
Okay, here's a story. Yeah. I was like, here's a story. Me versus Jinder, me versus Elias, me versus Finn, me versus, everybody on every card in the entire company, I turned in a story for. So there's tons.
What was your favorite that you turned in?
Let's see. They had asked me about the Intercontinental title stuff because, and I put that out there. It's not really a serious goal of mine. I thought it'd mean more to, my people, I guess, more so than it does to me. But they're big on first evers, that's why they hammer it home all the time, like the first ever Cruiserweight Champion and stuff like that. Like Finn, first ever Universal Champion, stuff like that. They're big, they're really big on that, especially Vince. So, I said, well, there's never been a Filipino Intercontinental Champion. So I put that out there just to see if Filipino fans would kind of connect to it. And it resonated really well. So they're like, okay, well, write a story for it. So I think right about when they were coming into Finn and Lashley, I was like, okay, I could probably write something for this, because that was when they asked me to write one. And I always write stuff. I try to pick guys that I think I could give them something. And then if I can give multiple people something and then accomplish whatever my goal is as well, creatively speaking, that's how I approach a story. I never approach a story when I'm writing pitches and say, this is what I want to do, and then that's it, because then that's so selfish. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I remember looking at it at the time, and it was like, okay, ever since the Universal title, Finn had kind of struggled to have a big tentpole moment for his character. And I know that the company really, really wants to get behind him. They just can't find the right, thing. Yeah. And he hadn't won any golds since then. So I was like, okay, how could I help his character get to that point? And then I know that working with Bobby, it was like, they probably want Bobby to move up the card more, but they probably don't want him to take a loss because he's, a monster. So how can I help that transition and give Bobby something to do after and help him get through that, and also help Finn in the process? And they were together at the time. And I thought it was the perfect thing to write for. Leo doesn't get enough chances to wrestle, and I know that they try to find things as much as they can here and there for him to be able to have matches because he's super talented. Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is something I could write for, and I could help everybody in this thing, and it'll just give me the introduction and platform change that I need. So I just pitched I think an 8 to 10 week story for that, where, I could come in and help Finn when he's shorthanded, and then help him when he's shorthanded, and then kind of sneak past him to get a title opportunity. I wrote 2 or 3 different versions of it. Mm-hmm. So one version was kind of sneaking past him to a title opportunity, and then me and Finn kind of have a little bit of beef, because it was like, okay, I helped him as a friend, but now he wants me to get out of the way. But I'm like, no, I'm here now. And then it was a way to get the title off Bobby without him having to lose, but also get the title onto Finn in the end. So I wrote an 8 to 10 week story that was like that. And I think it was the best version of it was I kind of sneak past him and then kind of steal the win in like a 3-way. So then I kind of steal the title from him, but then I end up just, losing to him straight up one-on-one, and then give him the moment so then he can move on as champion. Bobby can move on without ever having taken a loss. And theoretically, Bobby can move on to crushing me next. a David versus Goliath thing, because I kind of cost him that. And then he could keep moving up the card. So that's the type of stuff I would write, is how could I accomplish helping other people move up, and then just get something to keep my ball rolling. So I had that, and then I kind of liked the idea of working with Jinder, because I like the Bollywood boys, and so it would give me a chance to work with them. And I think that story was based on Jinder kind of big leaguing me in terms of status, like cultural status, and also just professional status. He's a former world champion, and I'm just a cruiserweight, and it was just I'm not taking any of his crap, sort of thing. And then the Elias thing was just something more entertainment-y, like more fun and loose and goofy. I think it was you know, like I'd pick up his guitar in the back and play it when he's not around or something like that. And then he discovers it's out of tune later, so he crushes me with it. And then, you know, I get back on him and interrupt his in-ring performance by leading the arena in karaoke, because I was trying to think what's super Filipino, and I was like, karaoke is super Filipino. So I was like, I could interrupt his set by kind of forcing him into a duet that he doesn't want to do. So yeah, I wrote a bunch of stuff, but those three were like my favorites.
Now, the next question I'm going to ask you, now feel free to correct me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, because this is from a dirt sheet. Now, in August of 2017, it was reported that Enzo was placed into the division to get more eyes on 205 Live. Is that correct?
I think that was the idea. The same idea as, you know, when we got Neville. And also when we got Kalisto. I think they just wanted to see how they can incorporate some integration that we didn't have, but we probably needed.
Yeah, so now this was like hot with the wrestling community, because a portion of wrestling fans were pretty annoyed with Enzo being the champion, because 205 Live was kind of the worker show. Like they knew they can get the in-ring, all the high-flying in-ring action, and it's the more worker-based show, and Enzo wasn't known for that. Now, did you feel that Enzo being on 205 Live benefited the division at all?
I think it potentially could have, but statistically it didn't. I remember when it happened, man, they literally sat us down for a roster, just our roster, not the whole roster, but they sat us down with our roster, like, not like, sorry, you're gonna have to babysit this guy, but like, but like not exactly like that. But
I know what you mean.
Like, yeah, the meeting was everybody except Enzo present. So if you understand, like the way that is implied, but you know, it was a positive thing. Like, we're going to move him here and help him, you know, in the ring. And we're hoping that he can bring attention to the show. And it was like, okay. So be willing to just let him eat you alive on the mic. And even though you guys have stuff to say back, don't. Just let him do it. And in the ring, help him to get through the matches. And hopefully this will turn to interesting stuff. So some of it was kind of grating, because it's like, you know, he would say stuff that was really awesome, but it would get him over. And it was like, you're supposed to be a bad guy. And meanwhile, not everybody, but some of the guys in our roster is pretty good on the mic. And especially at the time, people didn't know that. Some guys are really good. Gulak is really good.
Yeah.
I think I'm not bad. Brian's really good.
Yeah.
A lot of guys are pretty good, and we had to just say nothing. So it was a little bit frustrating, but you know, he was a nice enough guy and everything. But you know, we did, the idea was to kind of get that residual effect. But I mean, we would ask him every week, how are we doing? And they'd say, you know, whatever metric they measure for viewership or everything, it just went down every week. There was no point that it went up at all.
Now, during his time as the Cruiserweight Champion, was there any take back by any superstars? Because, like you said, you guys were told not to say anything, but it felt like it was the division against him at some point, and it brought a kind of a sense of realism to it, because you guys were the workers and he kind of knew he wasn't. So was there any like take back by anybody backstage?
Like pushback? You mean?
Yes, pushback. Yes.
Not that I know, but for me, I don't, socially speaking, I'm kind of separate from that sort of thing. Like, I mean, even when Aries was there, he was kind of divisive to a lot of the guys in the Cruiserweight locker room. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it was more like the Cruiserweights wanting to ostracize a guy that they were jealous of, as opposed to him really rubbing them the wrong way. Because not everybody gets along with Aries. I'm using this as an example.
Yes.
But it was embellished because the locker room was insecure. And I think they kind of did that same thing with Enzo. Like, the locker room was insecure because, you know, he is a talented guy. And he was coming from a prominent spot, so he has a lot to offer. But a lot of the guys are like, well, when is it going to be my turn, so to speak? And so they would take umbrage to guys like that and kind of pick them apart. But I always looked at it, and maybe this is just because I've been around for a lot longer, like I enjoyed working with Aries or being on the opposite of an Enzo promo or something like that, because it's like that doesn't bother me. If they can help the show, then everybody wins. So I don't know how much pushback there was, because I never see stuff that way, but I know that in those two cases there was some, because you could kind of see it from the other guys, but it would manifest itself in different ways.
Now, while you were with WWE, the world of wrestling had changed drastically, in my opinion. Now, people are always waiting for the next boom period in wrestling, and on the show, we always try to tell people that the boom period in wrestling is happening now with everything outside of WWE. Now, like,
I feel like it's like 2004 or 2003 all over again.
Yeah, because New Japan's at a high. We just had All In recently. AEW is officially a thing. A lot of promotions are like taking off now. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm still kind of learning, to be honest. I feel like I'm kind of learning how to be a wrestler all over again. I mean, I remember when I started, I wrestled for 3 or 4 years before New Japan kind of recruited me. And, from like 98 to like 2002, the indies weren't really a thing. Like, they were kind of a thing, but it kind of just felt like leftovers from like the territory days and these indie cards that, internet wasn't even big enough to kind of cover a lot of this stuff at the time. So it's like, it was just the Wild West. But then I went to Japan, went to CMLL, spent a couple years like kind of away from American wrestling. And when I came back, all of a sudden TNA was like a major league promotion with pay-per-views and weekly TV, and Ring of Honor had come up and made this big splash. And there were all these like indie tournaments that were getting hotter and hotter, like the Super 8 and like the Ted Petty, and, PWG was starting, I think, like within that year or two after that. So it kind of reminds me of then, because I like, just now, like my schedule's filled up for the rest of the year so quickly. And I'm like, where did all these places come from? Because I like, the 6 or 7 years ago, when I was kind of doing more indies and stuff before like TNA and WWE, a lot of this stuff wasn't around.
Mm-hmm. Now, who are some wrestlers that you're interested in facing?
Everyone. People keep asking me like, what's your dream match? And I tell them the next one, because everybody's so good now. Everybody's talented. So, I mean, it's just exciting to, be able to get, like, there's some old faces who are friends, obviously there's guys like Zach or like Jeff Cobb or, like the Bucks. I kind of grew up with them in wrestling, so to speak. There's a lot of different guys that it's cool that I have the chance to be able to reconnect with. Gresham, I've never been in the ring with Jonathan Gresham, but I've known him for a while, and it's exciting that now I have the freedom to be able to cross paths with him if our schedules match up. And then there's people that I have no idea and I've never seen before, and they're gonna blow me away. I know it, because there's just so much talent now.
Now, this is my last question, because I want to thank you again for your time, but this is the last question. We're going to end this the way we started. So, what do you think is the biggest problem with the 2019 Los Angeles Lakers?
It reminds me of the 2012 season when they had all the injuries. I really think consistency was the problem, because, when the kids were healthy and everybody was playing pretty good around Christmas before Braun had his injury, we were in 4th place. Yes. We might have finished with the 3rd seed if we kept that pace. Mm-hmm. So primarily I think it's that, the suspensions and then those injuries that really killed everything. But I think next year, everybody being healthy, like the off season is going to be kind of tricky. I was just telling a friend of mine, I feel like Kyrie is secretly the linchpin in everything.
Yep, I feel the same way.
Because him choosing to stay or go in Boston is going to dictate whether Boston makes a good offer for Davis or not at all. And if they don't, that makes the Lakers the only horse in the race because the Knicks traded Porzingis. And if the Knicks get Kyrie, they're probably looking more to sign somebody because they don't have assets to trade for Davis. So then again, that leaves Lakers maybe the only horse left in the race for Davis, and their new GM is probably going to be under pressure to get a deal done because that was kind of black eye for the Pelicans with their GM kind of like playing hokey pokey with it and not really wanting to trade Davis. And so that changes so much. But then if Kyrie stays in Boston, then Ainge will probably make a stingy trade package for Davis, and then a team like the Lakers or a backup team will wait that out and try to outbid Boston, and then that changes the field. Or if Kyrie goes to LA, then the Lakers trade Lonzo and a package and try to get a guy like Davis, or try to sign Boogie Cousins, who probably won't get a max from Golden State, but he's going to want one if he's healthy.
Yeah.
But all of it, I think, comes back to Kyrie. Everybody's got to wait on Kyrie, and I don't think people realize it, but he's going to control everything.
Yeah, I agree. Even no matter what Kyrie does, I think he's the key to all this. And what were your thoughts on the Anthony Davis trade demand 10 days before the deadline? Because I personally feel that he did that on purpose to kind of ensure that he goes to LA, because Boston would have had to involve Kyrie in any deal. So I kind of think that it kind of put the Lakers on a 10-day window to get him. And if they don't, then New Orleans will be able to negotiate with Boston in the summer.
Right. Well, I think because of the timing, Boston couldn't do anything because I think Kyrie's not allowed to be part of a deal, right?
Yeah, that's true. They would have to involve Kyrie in any Anthony Davis deal.
Yeah. So I think that was along the lines of what you're saying. I mean, I do think that tried to make a preferable window for LA, but in the interest of, like, I guess if you're in Davis's shoes and if you're acting in the best interest of both parties, the most amount of time is going to be the best, because I would rather give them two trade deadlines to trade me and an off season, as opposed to blindsiding them in the summer or even the next trade deadline when they're like, wait, I thought you were going to be cool. So I don't think it's as bad of a thing. I think that non-LA fans and especially New Orleans fans make it out to be such a vilified thing because they're angry that Davis wants to leave. But in reality, he's giving them three different
notices.
He's giving them three different notices because they might be able to get a panic fire sale out of it at this trade deadline. They might be able to get a panic fire sale during the summer, and they might be able to get a panic fire sale during the next trade deadline. And Davis gave him the leeway to get all of that. Yeah. As opposed to just saying next year in December, like, I'm not coming back. But yeah, I mean, obviously it would have worked out good if Demps was, not kind of just like leading the Lakers on, but I think Davis gave him a good chance to find a good trade for him.
Yeah, because the whole try and trade the whole team, then they get blown up by 42 points the night against Indiana. I get it, it's a business and you have to accept it, but trading the whole team for one guy, it's kind of rough on your roster.
And I don't know if that really was the actual trade terms, because nobody knows who leaked it. So I don't know if they really wanted to trade 4 or 5 guys for him or not. But I think the other thing that is sort of a narrative on it, there's no other teams other than LA and Boston that has the unique amount of young potential stars. Like anybody else, if they're a winning team, there's nobody they want to trade. If they're a bad team, they don't have young players as good as Ingram or Tatum or Brown or Lonzo or Kuzma. Boston and LA were the only teams the last 3 or 4 years that consistently drafted good players at a high level. So when people are like, well, this just ensures that LA is in the race or whatever, but who else is going to be? The Orlando Magic? They don't have anybody to trade, it was going to be LA or Boston no matter what.
Yeah, I agree. It's just frustrating.
Or New York. Or New York if they still had Porzingis. But after they shipped him, it's just like you know that they're all in on a free agent or trying to get Zion. So
yeah, it's just a frustrating time for me because I thought the playoff drought was over, and then all this stuff happened. Like, at least I still got LeBron in 2K. That's all I could say about it.
I mean, yeah, I really thought we were going to get in, and I was so happy to see like my LA fans like taking in Braun without like ostracizing Kobe. Like, and we were so accepting of like the new like era, and it was just like this. I just wish we would have found a way to sneak in, but we just didn't.
Yeah, because before the season started, me and my co-host, we did an NBA preview show. I had the Lakers finishing at 3 or 4, and I had them losing to nobody in the West but Golden State. That's how I had them.
By Christmas Day, I would have said the exact same thing. I would have said a middle seed, maybe top 4. And I honestly didn't think in a 7-game series with LeBron in playoff mode, and if the kids were all clicking, especially with the way Kuzma and Ingram were coming on, like I didn't see anybody in a 7-game series that would take place within a week span. You know, like I didn't see anybody but Golden State being a serious threat to them, because Houston was looking, and they still do look like on again, off again. And the only other team that looks like it could really be a powerhouse at that point in the season, or in the postseason, is Oklahoma City. Yeah.
And they ended up tailing off. Now that I believe they're currently the 8th seed or 6th seed or something like that, because the standards are so tight now. They've been flip-flopping back and forth.
Yeah, like I think the other 2 teams up there, like Portland and say Denver, obviously, but I think that they're up there because it was more of a consistency thing. But I feel like in the postseason, it kind of falls on players like a KD and a Steph, and like a Braun or like a Harden, like people like that. So I didn't see, like, I feel like this is the year Denver doesn't really go far in the playoffs. Yeah, I agree. But it was like their year to say we're here now. Mm-hmm. And then next year and the next couple of years is when they kind of get to like the semifinals, finals, that type of thing. But I thought, man, LA has a chance to sneak through if they can avoid the Warriors until the finals. But I don't know. I was like, if they could just avoid them till the conference finals, then that's the series. But I don't know.
Yeah, so TJ, I want to get you out of here. I kept you way longer than I anticipated.
No worries, man. It's my pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah. So where could the fans find you at?
So I only got 2 socials. I'm sort of antisocial for a guy with socials. But you can find my Twitter and my Instagram at megatjp. Pretty soon I'll be launching a website with a new like web store, and that'll have my schedule and all kinds of stuff. My own touring dates and things like that. And when that gets up, you'll be able to find it on my socials. But just check my socials, and some pretty cool stuff will be coming in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Do you know if you'll be in Philly anytime soon? We have Tommy Dreamer's House of Hardcore. That's one of our local promotions out here.
Like I had gone back and forth a little bit on, I think, a couple sets of dates with House of Hardcore, but we just couldn't find something to match up. Like the first week that I opened my schedule, man, I booked like 50 appearances between May and August. So like a lot of stuff that was coming up, like a lot of places kind of missed out. So it'll be like round 2 of booking stuff later in the fall. But yeah, House of Hardcore was like top of the list of one of the places I really kind of wanted to get into. I like Tommy a lot, and I've known him for years, and I always think that those cards are really good. So
yeah, well, hopefully we can get all that worked out. And I said, I hope to see you get a chance to see you soon live in person. So thank you again for giving us your time, and you have a great day, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hop on the top rope, by the land with his elbow. Got him now, put him down right now, hit him with the palm handle. tuning up the band. Y'all don't understand. Fist of Superman. It's a SummerSlam. Here we go again. Fans marking man. Man, I hate my balls. Shut the Vince McMahon. It ain't safe to land off the cell. Fans love it. Ain't hard to tell. Talking madness. Awesome. Well, what I'm cooking, man. Y'all all can smell.